And a fine how do you do, and good evening to all of you out there in the video land side of things. Let me get the recording started, and we shall proceed with the Liberty Talk.
The Constitution isn't just a document. It's a blueprint for freedom. We're breaking down politics at every level, exposing government overreach, and going where the mainstream media surely won't. Join us in defending individual rights against the bureaucratic tide. You're listening to the Missouri Liberty Report.
All right, folks, and we are back for another edition of the Missouri Liberty Report, and Catherine Dreyer is in the live chat. Good to see you tonight, Catherine. So just to let everybody know, this is all tentative as of now. I have to call the local park board and see what kind of pavilions are open. I am looking tentatively at a date of September 19th to have the first Owensville Coolidge Day here, and I am looking at getting I'm looking at getting Tom and Brandon, hopefully Catherine. Also going to look and see if we can get Ron Calzone there. I want to get a lot of good speakers talking about sovereignty of the individual and, a less restrictive government. And I don't know, like weird things like government not spending so much of your money and, and taking all your money through whatever increased sales tax and service taxes, all kinds of weird stuff. Because we're all going to be white and weird and have a Coolidge Day, hopefully in September. So I will try to get a hold of the park board tomorrow and see if I can't get a pavilion reserved on that date. And then once I get that done, I'm sure there'll be at least one pavilion open. God, I hope I don't pick the weekend where they're all taken up and reserved. But if I can get that down pat, yeah, Ike Skelton would be another one. But we'll look and see if we get a myriad of speakers and make a cool day out of it. And I even got on Amazon today, and I'll just get a few items that we can raffle off. So I found some really cool like tumblers, kind of like this, a little smaller with Calvin Coolidge's face on it. Saw a really cool mug. I'll mutilate the quote, but I believe it. The quote is, "You can't lift up the weak by pulling down the strong." And I was like, that'd be a great coffee mug for people to have around. Nice Calvin Coolidge quote. But anyway, that's what we're looking at. I've been threatening this for a while. I threatened it last year, never got it done. Started thinking about it today after seeing the likes of Tim Jones dragging Calvin Coolidge's good name through the mud, saying that Calvin Coolidge would be all about Amendment 5. I think he'd be very disappointed in Tim Jones personally, but that's my take. So anyway, we're looking at that. And hopefully we can start off strong, and our first Coolidge Day will have a lot of Catherine says Tim Jones seems to know a lot about Coolidge. And she's also got two laughing emojis behind that. Note the sarcasm. So anyway, tonight is the last night to talk about the amendments on the ballot, and we want to discuss some bill that Representative Massie says he's going to introduce about flock cameras. But as you can see, if you're watching on the video side of things, that Tom Martz is joining us by video and audio instead of on the phone, which is nice because now people can see Tom's wise face as he talks about the state constitution. So anyway, Tom, first of all, good evening to you, sir.
Good evening, and if all the pavilions are rented out, I know where there's a flock camera where near you.
Yeah.
That we could hold this event at.
All the license plates that they could just read while we're parked along the shoulder of the highway. Yeah, we could have it right there at the Gasconade River Bridge in Mount Sterling. We could just hang out on the side of the highway and be in full view of the flock camera. It'll be great. So, okay, Tom, I'm going to turn it over to you first. And again, we're seeing a lot of influencers, if you want to use that word, coming out and telling us all how we're supposed to vote yes on 4 and 5. And I'll even voice a little disappointment at a post I made earlier that someone said, voting yes on Amendment 4 is like that's should be a no brainer if you're a conservative in Missouri. And I said, yeah, if you want to turn your power over to the legislature, that's fine. Go ahead and vote yes. And even Tony Lavasco, I was kind of surprised where he said, no, you're not turning your power over to the legislature. You're just keeping it out of the hands of the mob. And I thought, well, if my path to getting something on the ballot is harder than the legislature, then I have seemingly turned my power and given more of it to the legislative body. I might be smoking crack there, but Tom, go ahead, give us your thoughts.
Well, we've got into this talking point now, and I don't know if it's the General Assembly's fault or if it's just the people's fault for following along. That these outside organizations come in by the ballot staff so they can change our Constitution. And while that's somewhat, it's also accurate to point out that the people also use that provision to be able to redress the grievances of government. Like in, now I wasn't a huge fan of the amendment, but medicinal marijuana one, where if the legislative body would have just done what it should have done, which was to enact a state that would eliminate marijuana out of the Schedule 1 area and put it at, I don't know, Schedule 4, Schedule 5. I know Brandon probably knows this better than I do. Then you literally would have made it so that the businesses could have propped up, the product would have been available, could have put, I say this word, common sense legislation on it, and there would have been no big issue. But the General Assembly they were us and decided that you don't have the right to choose an option that is outside the parameters of the pharmaceutical companies. What ended up happening is that matters into their own hands along financial interest from outside the state, and they decided to pass a god medicinal marijuana bill, but needed and what was desired by the people. Therefore, the people decided to redress the grievances of government by telling government that we are going to do this and you're not going to stop us, and we'll set up the parameters by which everything is negotiated, how it's tracked, how it's used, and everything else. Now there's a bunch of legalese that need to be in there, but I think in all sincerity, had the people not done that, follow along with Amendment 3, which is the abortion up until the head piece of constitutional amendment that came later, I think we're to the point where we don't think 5 minutes beyond what the current time of day is, and we don't see that the people using their authority to redress the grievance of government is actually a good thing. Well, to make sure that the Constitution isn't used in a manner that it's not supposed to be being used in, but not educated in that perspective. Therefore, it's why I have Amendment 4 for people to go, well, I don't authority. I need the government to tell me what it is I can and cannot do. Therefore, I'm going to grant that constitutional amendment authority to the General Assembly. I don't want to have to deal with that, because in reality, if Amendment 4 passes, all it takes is Congressional District 1, St. Louis, to defeat whatever amendment is put forth by the people, no matter if the rest of the state is voting 100% in favor of a constitutional amendment. St. Louis, with a 50 plus 1 to a 49.9, defeats the whole thing, and it's ludicrous.
Brandon, your thoughts?
Yeah. I mean, just to kind of piggyback off of what Tom was saying about if it's the legislation sitting on their hands. Like if you're upset about all of these different constitutional amendments that have gone through, the legislature sitting on their hands and not passing some of it. Things that were popular among Missourians, like the right to gamble on sports, marijuana, um, and then even kind of what Tom was alluding to, there was a because we talked about it on the show, there was an amendment that was a tax cut or some sort of stopgap on taxes, and the first district voted against it, and it would have passed everywhere else. It's one of the very few ballot initiatives that would have failed uh, because of the District of St. Louis. Usually, like when we're talking about sports gambling and uh, marijuana, that would have failed because of a rural Republican district. And so, yeah, it definitely goes both ways. And then also, like, I not necessarily with what Tony Lavasco was saying, but some of the people pushing for this keep saying the term that most like these ballot initiatives are getting passed that most Missourians don't want, but they're passing by a majority vote. And so it's hard. I mean, just that language alone, I know it's a semantic argument, but it irks me to see it because you can act like, well, we're passing a lot of things that most Missourians didn't want. It's like a majority of them voted for it. And so it's hard for me. I'm hard pressed to see that your most Missourians didn't want these things. And so, yeah, I think it's like a combination of the legislature sitting on their hands is why you get some of these things passed. And you're definitely giving more power to the legislature when you're taking away power from yourself that the legislature has.
Yeah, they're definitely the government, when given the option, generally, even with a Republican majority, they're going to that vacuum will be filled by government. It's not going to, if we say, well, you guys get an easier path, and they try to play it off. Well, it's not an easier path. You guys have the majority. And if you have enough lobbyist money flowing, you'll get it through the committee. Amendment 4 goes from the House to the Senate, gets PQ'd right back to the House. No debate. I love it because they said these amendments were debated in both chambers. They passed. Amendment 4 was not debated in the Senate. It got PQ'd. Immediately went up for vote, went right back to the House. House passed it, and now it's on the ballot. And it is also, and so, that argument doesn't hold water with me. And to Tom's point, what he said earlier, it is disturbing to see how many people can get fooled into thinking that they should hand over their power to do an end around the legislature and handing that power over to the legislature and then being fooled into thinking that they haven't given up anything. And you cannot make that make sense to me in my mind. And again, I'm not the brightest crayon on the box, and I know it, but that makes no sense to me at all. And it also doesn't make sense how you can be that easily fooled. I get it because it's always the leftist liberals are out there trying to foment their radical agenda in the state of Missouri. And it's like, yeah, but you guys take a lot of out-of-state money flowing into these PACs, flowing to your campaign funds, pushing things, and also to both your points, being very weak-spined on things like marijuana and a myriad of things. There have been, I won't say perfect IP reform bills, but they've been better than this amendment. And they just laid it over and decided not to do it. And because people can't be civilized adults and just come to some sort of agreement. They just lay it over, and then the session's over. But then again, they get to use that. They get to use that as a tool in the next legislative cycle or at election time, same as the federal government does, right? They're like the SAVE Act and all this stuff. Oh, we just can't get it passed. But if you elect us next time, we'll get it done. And Missouri does the same thing. Republicans do it. We couldn't get it done because we had some problems, but it's still our first priority is to get IP reform done. They can't get it done, not through the general legislative process. So what do? They're going to try to mind screw the public and trick them into thinking that if it doesn't pass, that every horrible left-wing ideology agenda is going to come through in Missouri. And it's like, well, there's been an awful lot of crap Republican things that have also come through on the ballot or through the legislative body that are unconstitutional and aren't for the good of the people, especially on the liberty side of things. So all those arguments don't hold any water with me. It's unimpressive. Yeah, I mean, Brandon just sent me over this post here. This is look at all this money, folks. $500,000, $500,000, $500,000. And it's look at that. Columbus, Ohio, Springfield, Virginia, Columbus, Ohio, Springfield, Virginia, Columbus. Is that Maryland? Yeah, Maryland, Virginia. So again, they don't say anything about that. They don't say anything about that kind of money. Oh, there we go again. They only complain about money coming from somewhere else that's not filtering through the PACs and all that jazz. Now, when it comes to Amendment 5, again, it's the trust me, bro mentality. Tom says it more eloquently than I do. He has a little bit better emphasis on those words. But Amendment 5, it's the same thing. It's the trust me, bro brigade coming back out and saying, yeah, I mean, and again, they don't want to admit that they are getting all the power into figuring out how this revenue is going to be gathered by different means, adding to sales tax, adding service taxes. They don't want you to look at it as you're taking your power away because the Hancock amendment is suspended, even though they swear up and down it's not. To my understanding, it's still being suspended. And you're giving all the power over to them. And I could have sworn that a lot of Republicans like to tell me how they're for smaller government and less taxes. And we have these two nonsense amendments coming up on the ballot next week, Tuesday. Tom, your thoughts?
Well, Amendment 5 is one of those that, like I've said before 1,000 times, I am actually in favor of a dominant sales tax in order for the state to collect revenue. But that revenue is for the things that the state is required to do, which also means that we probably slash the state's budget almost half from where it's at now to get back to where the states are collecting revenues, in which it is that the state is probably the end arbiter of those issues like soil, water, land, air a little bit less because of it's up in the sky, but definitely soil and water is a purview of the state, except for when it's on private property. But you've got double. I can't remember what the number was, but if you have 12 million coming in on sales tax, then you have like 24 million coming in on income tax. So I can understand where people go, well, wait a minute, if we're collecting 4.25% to get half of what it is that we need, and we need to throw 2 times that amount on top of the sales tax, that's going to make it increase up to like 12%. I can understand where people come up with that thought process. But when you've got, like in my business, I do a lot of service calls. Those service calls right now are not taxed. Now, if I sell something to somebody or I have to replace a part tax that I need to collect and, pass that on to the state, yada, yada. But my labor is not taxed when I go to there. Neither is a HVAC, so neither is a mechanic. you've got medical expenses that aren't taxed. There's a whole host of things that you don't think about that aren't taxed. And in 2015, the people using I think that was, but maybe it wasn't, put the language into the Constitution that if an item is not taxed currently, that item of 2016 cannot taxed for any future instances. And I think that's Article 10, Section 23, I think. And basically, the whole gist of Amendment 5 is to eliminate that part of the Constitution that the people just put in there in 2016 or 2015. And it's also to allow them to hedge up against the Hancock Amendment, although they do say, well, it's going to be transitional. So we're not going to end up with an overreach. So the Hancock Amendment comes into play. But I have yet to see somebody lay out functionally how any of this is going to work. And since you doubled the size, scope, and power of government in the past decade, why should I trust you to get this one correct?
Brandon, your thoughts?
Yeah. I mean, Missouri's sales tax is deceptive because we have very high, like, local sales tax. And so you're going to see the sale, like our sales tax in most across Missouri is usually about 8%, despite only having a 4% state sales tax. It's made up for at the local and county level. And so when you're talking about adding the sales tax, like, you're not lightening anyone's tax burden. You're either taxing the money they make or the money they spend. And so either way, the government's getting their portion. We talked about it last week. They didn't cut any budget. Kehoe signed a $50.8 billion budget in 2025 through the fiscal year 2025-2026. And then in June of this year, signed a $50.7 billion budget. So they didn't cut any spending, like Catherine was saying in the chats. They never talk about cutting spending. It doesn't happen. And so it's not necessarily what they're trying to do. If they were going to make it an argument on principle, if they're going to be like, on principle, you shouldn't be paying your income tax, we're going to shift it to a sales tax, and that's the plan. No, they say they're telling you that they're going to cut your taxes. Mark Cox had some long video that he posted on Facebook about how the average Missouri, family pays X amount in taxes. And then when you get rid of their income tax, he's like, let's say we have to boost the sales tax by 2%. The average family is going to save this amount of money. I'm like, okay, but the state government is spending the same amount of money. That money's going to come from somewhere. And so it's that the Republicans are lying about what this is doing. So that's the part that bugs me the most on Amendment 5.
Yeah, I've seen some comments where people are like, they want to talk about one guy's like, I think the worst thing for Missourians prosperity is an income tax. And I go, no, it's actually not. The worst thing for prosperity in America is government spending and the continued printing of a fiat currency. That's the greatest assault that you can make on the wealth and the prosperity of people, is to continually print more and more money and spend and deficit spending. Yes, the income tax is theft, no doubt about it. But when, again, the state of Missouri seemingly doesn't want to cut spending, the federal government certainly doesn't want to cut spending, and most people are using the fiat currency, so that its value is always being debased. No, dude, you all's inability to be serious and literally cut the budget, as Tom said, in half is the problem. The problem isn't, well, we have an income tax. No, the problem, as always, is you all have a spending problem. It's the way it's been for years. Again, in the last 10 years, the state budget has doubled. Is that my fault? Nope. Is that Brandon or Tom's fault or Catherine or half people in the live chat? No. You all can't stop spending money. And again, they tried to split hairs and go, the budget's 48.7 billion. Yes, with an additional $2 billion for infrastructure, totaling 50.7 billion, i.e., no budget cut. So now they're going to throw this word screw out there and try to make you think they cut 4 billion. You know, every time you see a budget, I've looked at the last 3 years' budgets. When you break it down at the Office of Administration's website, they'll be like what this agency wants, the government's recommendation. But when you see the overall end all totals, the governor's recommendation is always higher. And then, you know, they trim it down a little bit. But that's the Missouri Freedom Caucus saying we cut spending by 4 billion. No, you didn't. That was a proposed budget. That wasn't the final budget. So you didn't cut spending. And they just try to split hairs and use deceptive language at every turn. It's like, guys, you're still that alone tells me you can't be trusted. If you're trying to throw weird math at me and try to use a headline like we discussed last week, a headline from an article, and then send it to me and in a comment on X, and I just look at it and say proposed budget. Proposal. That means not final. And I may not have the greatest vocabulary that's really broad or anything, but I have enough of a vocabulary to know what proposed means and what the final budget's going to be. So it's just it irritates me, and people aren't picking up on that. There are people who are not picking up on those differences, and $2 billion is a pretty big difference when they're trying to just eliminate that $2 billion for infrastructure and try to separate it from the overall budget. It's like, no, that's the budget because that's the money they're going to spend. That's not cutting, and that crap just drives me insane. But some people are falling for it. Sucks, but that's the way it is. What do you think, Tom?
Well, five is a beast of its own making, and I see some state reps now are trying to make the case that the Trust Me Bo application is like a red herring. If you and a buddy go up skiing and your buddy is an expert and you're not, and he decides that he's going to take you out skiing and convinces you to go on a course that is far exceeds your capabilities. And by the time you get down to the bottom, you end up in a hospital in a cast. Then you decide to go on a ski trip with this same buddy. Are you going to trust that buddy idea of what is a course that you're skiing? Or are you seek out somebody else's opinion, you being the beginner on what it is that you should ski on? I think our General Assembly has shown itself over the past decade plus. Now, granted, it's changed. There's every 2 years you end up with a new class of freshmen, then your class of sophomore. But there's still not enough. Not shown themselves to either limit the power of government. They haven't done anything that would convince me that I should just open up my checkbook and say, here, you go ahead and take the money you need and just make sure that I have enough to live on or to survive off of. And the thought process that they know what best and you need to sit down, shut up, just absolutely irks me. And I've seen that from people in the General Assembly this year that I wouldn't have thought I would have seen that from. Now, granted, that's not the way they explain it, but that is absolutely what they're saying. Just let us do what we know needs done. Sit down, shut up. You're not the people who are experienced at this, and we'll go about our business and we'll do the Trump thing. We'll make sure we have no income tax in the state of Missouri. We'll follow those other great states. So, Florida, Texas, Utah, Tennessee. And by the way, Tennessee, if you go in business in Tennessee, you are the second worst able to survive, and you're a business upstart. So there are issues with every state, and I'm quite certain that the reason that we're not, even though the revenue to the state has growing, is because the income tax being told, and that's what they believe.
Yeah. What's funny is like, one of the darlings of the grassroots movement is Joe Nicola. And he's come out and he's like, I don't like Amendment 5. And then now you got people out there like, oh, I thought this guy was really good, but he's doing things. It's like, oh, did he hurt your little feelings because he's not a fan of Amendment 5? You poor babies. Yeah, and there's a lot of stuff that I don't agree with Joe Nicola on. Again, his constitutional voting score was like 20 something percent. I think 28, 29%. So not the not the constitutional conservative champion that he's made out to be, but I am happy that he's speaking out and saying Amendment 5 is not the way to go. And then like some others, like Darren Chappell for
That makes him a commie.
one. Yeah, absolutely. But then
That
I
makes
would
him a
I would have
commie.
thought, yeah, I just, and then I see Darren Chappell out there and he's just like, you guys just don't understand. It's like, no, I don't think you understand. And I generally agree with Darren Chappell on a lot of things, but he's all in on it too. And I'm just like, I don't, I can't make heads or tails of these people right now. The way they're acting, it's like some of them have completely flipped and are it. I don't. It's almost like they know something's coming, but they won't tell us what it is. You know what I mean? The way they're acting, they're like, man, we got it. It doesn't matter how we get this done. We got to get it done. Something awful's coming down the pike. And you're like, well, tell us what it is. And they're like, well, we're not going to do that. It's like, okay, then stop acting like everything's an emergency and you have to have this done right now. And all the fear porn has to come out. You have to like call us a commie or we're part of a teachers union or we're a radical leftist because we don't agree with these two amendments. And it just, I'm, I'm blown away by people who I would generally think would not act like that, start acting like that. And it makes me uncomfortable because they've seemingly flipped, and I just don't know what to make of it. What do you think, Brandon?
Well, I kind of like Tom's analogy, but I want to tweak it just a hair. It's as if somebody has gone skiing and broke their leg every year for 10 years. Every year since 2020, they've gone out skiing and broke their leg. And then they're like, hey, come with me. I'm going to teach you how to ski. So this guy who's broke their leg 7 years in a row, they drag you up to the top and you're like, okay, so what do I do? Do I turn my legs in, out? Like, what do I do with my arms? And he goes, no. Wait till we get to the top and you just got to trust me. So now we're strapping in, going to the top with somebody who's broke their leg 7 years in a row and won't tell you how to ski. They're just saying, trust me, when we get to the top, you'll figure it out. That's what it feels like to me. Yeah, I actually, funny to your point too about the urgency with which they need to pass this. I saw some representative from Missouri, I can't remember who, he was on a reel that would just scrolled by. And he was like, this is a once in a lifetime opportunity to get rid of the income tax. I'm like, no, it's not. You guys could, if it fails, you could put this bill out again next year or the next year. Like, this doesn't mean that you have to have like once in a lifetime opportunity. The session's open every year. You get 5 months out of the year every year to try it again and try it again. It's not something that we can't have a debate on. It's not something that you can't show us your plan, where you like what different, like what services and what consumption taxes are you raising. And I don't know if this is going to be the case per se, but in the state of Washington, they have no income tax, but they have like a business and operations tax, which sounds to me, and it's on your gross receipts. And so that kind of sounds like the exact same thing. I don't know if that's what the state has. Like that was their plan. Is like, well, we got rid of the income tax. We've added a business and operations tax that charges you on gross receipts. It's like, okay, so that's the same thing. Again, like we said, they're spending the same amount of money. You're going to be taxed about the same amount either way.
Yeah. And again, because they can't stop spending other people's money. And I don't remember what it might have been like a Calvin Coolidge quote. I was re-listening to parts of Tom Woods's The Politically Incorrect Guide to American History. And I would butcher it too bad. I'm not even going to try to say it, but he talked about Calvin Coolidge's thoughts on spending government spending money. It was like giving them the ability to do so. Just they just like it's like this feeling they have to spend it. If it's there, you got to spend it. You can't let this opportunity go to waste. And it's just that constant like some people in life, if they have any money saved up, they feel like they got to spend it immediately. It's just something in their brain. They can't have any money held back. They got to spend it. And that's the way the state acts. They just, as soon as they get some money, they're like, we got to figure out a way to spend this. It's been incentivized for years because, all the agencies put forth the budget, what they like. And if they don't spend their whole budget the next year, they run the risk of that budget being reduced. And the government acts the same way, except they just get the bigger budget they want. Generally, they don't cut their spending, and they don't go, well, we'll do, I'll be honest. If I saw a 2% cut per year, guaranteed 2% cut per year, not 2% of the growth, which is what the federal government does. Like, well, we were going to do it this much, and we cut 2%. No, that's 2% off the money you wanted. I'm talking whatever 2% of this budget is this year, 2% goes away. And the next year, it goes away. And it's not 2% of what you want. It was 2% of that prior fiscal year's budget goes away. And we start slowly chipping away. I'd be happy with that because at least it would look like they're attempting to curb spending. They can't do that. That hurts their bones to think about. And so, yeah, they can't even be serious, like make a 1%. Was it like, didn't like Rand Paul have a penny plan one time that he proposed? Like, dude, just cut 1 penny from last year. Make an effort. And they're like, we can't do that. Not 1 penny. They're like, we need every single penny we can get our hands on. Like they're copper hoarders, even though pennies aren't made of copper anymore. It's like you're penny hoarders. And it's like, just 1 penny. They're like, nope. You can't even show the public that you're willing to spend 1 less penny because people would start expecting it. And that sucks. You can't have people expecting government to spend less money. So, yeah, go ahead, Tom.
I don't want this to come across as homerism, but Darren's benefit, he has actually run city budgets. He was the city administrator of Seymour down here on U.S. Highway. He brought Bolivar of bankruptcy up on. He was the city administrator up in Chillicothe. So if there was going to be an individual who I would completely trust, what I would trust the most in that legislative body, to me, because I know him, I know where he stands, have had some tight ties for like 20 years. I would trust Darren to try to work out a system that to be able for the city to, or not city, but the state to have its revenue and to eliminate the income tax. Of course, that's going to cause an increase in sales tax. It's also going to cause an increase in areas where they're not taxed already. But he's not the only, nor is he the one who's going to be able to propose all the change, because there's 163 other people. And I'm not even exactly if the proposals are simply going to be through the budget committee. Now, of course, they'll have to have hearings, and they'll do the committee hearings. The people be able to speak, yada 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 yada. But it's kind of like if we're going to change the Constitution in a constitutional convention, I want 100 Ron Calzones to be the one who sits on the panel to recommend changes to make it so that the Constitution is written in the manner that it should be written. As for the way the tax structure is, I would put more faith and more trust in Darren probably than anyone else that I know that's up there. But that still does not mean that simply because I trust everyone else, that on everyone else's finger stirring the pot and whatever it is that we're making in the pot. So it ends up being, because there's going to be set asides. Ag is going to have its set asides. Huge corporations have their set asides. If you go buy a John Deere and you're a farmer, it'll probably not be taxed. But if you go buy a John Deere Gator and you're just a simple hick from Hicksville, you're going to be paying. So there's going to be structure of it is still going to be full of loopholes. So it's not the fact that I don't want a income tax reduction. It's the fact that I don't know where they're going to go. I don't trust them to go. And I also see they'll be very impactful to the people who do not now pay income tax. Although they've paid income tax all their life. Now you're going to flip it around. So now that they're no longer paying income taxes, that now they're paying higher taxes on everything else under the sun that they purchase.
Yeah, and again, that's my whole thing. It's not that I have anything against Darren per se. Again, I don't trust the majority of that body. When the CARES Act money came in, and other people have talked about it too, when there's an influx of money, they trip all over themselves trying to spend it. And I have been shown, and I have not seen a pathway to responsible spending and meaningful cuts, like actual meaningful cuts to the budget. And, Darren can't do it all by himself. Absolutely agree. Can't do it by himself. It takes a whole lot of other folks. And that's where the problem comes in. A whole lot of folks. A lot of people, again, looking at their constitutional voting score. And I've tried to relay this to people. Tom's made mention of this. There was a video that Brandon and I played on this show of a legislator saying it's not his duty to know if something's constitutional or not. They just think that's what the courts are there for, to judge the legislations they pass. So if it goes to court and the legislation or the courts say it's cool, then it must be constitutional. And when I see all those things going on, I don't get a good feeling that we're going to get if we get rid of the income tax, it's going to take forever. Because again, they don't want to stop spending money. And the only thing they're doing is we have a select group of them who want to walk around and pat themselves on the back and make just flat out lie about the work they've done about cutting spending. So all that wrapped into one, it's like, yeah, I'm sorry, guys. You just haven't proven yourselves yet. to me. I mean, maybe they prove them, maybe, and it's one of those things. Tom's brought it up. Who knows what a real conservative is? Some people's idea of conservatism is just a certain few things, and whatever else government does, who cares? Because I got the two things I wanted. I didn't want biological males and women's sports, and I something else, and then who cares whatever else they do, as long as that's done. Those guys are conservative champions in my mind. It's like, no, no, they're not. I'm sorry. They're hell-bent on proposing legislations at times, even though I agree with it. It's still based, to me, on emotion and working on people's emotions, because that bill that had to do with like transgender surgeries and treatments for that got a sunshine provision put in. It only lasts like 3 years and it has to be revisited. And yeah, I'm glad we got a 3-year pause on it, but they all went around celebrating like they did something. It's like, you guys are leaving out something very important. And depending on what the legislative body looks like in 3 years and the way they cave on things and kind of cater to the Democrats sometimes and some of their stupidity, I'm not sure that in 3 years this won't flip right back to the way it was. It's just a lot of track, and I haven't even been keeping track of. I'm not a Tom Martz or Ron Calzone, where I've been watching the legislature for the last 20 years. Just in the last 4 or 5 that I've been paying attention, I don't see a track record for the most part that makes me go, you know what? I think these guys are all above board, and I really think they're going to do the right thing. And maybe that's me. Maybe I'm just a glass half empty kind of guy. I don't know. I just don't get the warm and fuzzies, gentlemen.
Well, I think a big part of it too. I'm stealing this from Tom, but the Constitution was built to protect the citizens from the government. Like, people forget, at the federal level and at the state level, like both the US Constitution and the state Constitution, they were built to protect the citizens from the government. Their power is derived from the people. And like, when you look at most of the legislators, like, they should stop swearing an oath to the Constitution. Like, they really should just stop swearing them in, because they don't care anyway. Like you said, you'll have the same people who, when they come into office, they'll swear an oath to uphold and defend the Constitution, and then turn around and tell you it's not their job to even know it, to even understand the basic principles of it, let alone the deeper context by reading the original language and understanding what the purpose of the Constitution was when it was written. But they don't even read it at face value to even manipulate it the way they want to. They just straight up say, no, the Constitution is not our responsibility as elected representatives of that Constitution. And I don't know. So yeah, I think I think it does, again, fall a little bit on the people not paying enough attention to their legislators, and then also just the legislators just blowing off the Constitution at will anyway.
Tom?
It's Brandon is not swearing an oath. I mean, it sounds, he's right. They might as well not. And based on the sheer fact that they don't even follow their own rules. And we've been at fault too, because there was something that we, as a group of people who look at all the legislation and look at how they're voting on it, there's something that we've kind of ignored, or it really didn't dawn on us that what they were saying versus what they're doing was not meant with the rules by which it is that they've created for themselves within that legislative body. And if you're not going to, by which it is that the Constitution creates and that you create in order to get from point A to point Z, then what was the purpose of it anyway? I mean, if I went through the state statutes, there's probably probably 3/4 of the state statutes literally have nothing with securing rights of the people, their life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, and the gains of their own industry. Gains of their own industry. What did that mean? Well, that was tax. Gains of your own industry. That's on your labor. Well, guess what? We have an income tax. How did that happen? Because we literally ignored what it was that was already in the country to create a mechanism by which it is that the state said, we need revenue, therefore we're going to go after this. It took federal government a constitutional amendment to create an income tax. I think it was the Supreme Court after Lincoln kind of went, nah, you kind of can't do that. So next time you do this, we need to do something different. And I also think that the 17th Amendment huge impact too, because states do not have representation in Washington, D.C. The people have quasi representation, states have none. And that was the purpose that legislative bodies choose who would be the 2 U.S. senators to go to Washington, D.C. to represent the states. So we've been kind of screwed for a very long time.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I just it is not comforting to see again that the legislators, for the most part, there are a few who seemingly ignore the document that they have sworn an oath to, or to uphold and defend. That seems meaningless to them. It is all about scoring brownie points for the party. So it's party over principle. It's a whole lot of things. It is not good for the people. That's first and foremost. It is not good for the people. It does not defend their liberties. It does not protect their natural rights. It doesn't do any of those things. It is a seemingly an institution of two parties, seemingly sometimes two heads of the same snake, and the people don't benefit. I mean, certain people do, right? Sometimes certain people benefit if you're in big ag, if if you have Kehoe or Parson or some of these others that as a governor, if you're in big ag, you get some stuff. If you're a big corporation, you get some stuff. But if you're just people without lobbying power and $500,000 in a account somewhere to pass along to campaigns, then you're almost voiceless. Now, I say almost because I have seen, SEPA in 2021, that was a tremendous volume of phone calls going into the Capitol as that bill is hitting the floor, as it's being talked about. Legislators' offices, phone boards were lighting up like Christmas trees. And thousands upon thousands of phone calls came in, although it was, hijacked by the gas tax, and it wasn't going to go through until Dave Schatz got his gas tax. But regardless, the amount of pressure put on by the people to get SEPA done, even though the Supreme Court or, the higher courts overturned it, they opined it was unconstitutional. So you can get things done. The people can get things done, and they can go up to Jeff City if they create enough of a racket and put enough pressure on. You can still get things done, but you really have to apply the pressure. And even sometimes, like gold and silver, a couple times in a row, phone boards were lighting up. It was constant bombardment of phone calls, and it still got to the floor. It just died on the floor. It's just one thing that, guns are pretty popular here in the state of Missouri. So that one was hard for them to turn away. Gold and silver was a little easier to turn away. Guns are a super popular thing here in Missouri, especially in the rural areas. But if that's your only recourse, and most of your legislative body is addicted to lobbyist money, and you lose the initiative petition, you don't lose it, but they make it so incredibly difficult for the people to get anything done. That is not a winning formula. That is not pro-liberty. That is not pro-freedom. That is not, again, it's not protecting your natural rights. It's not doing any of those things. It's a miniature version of Washington, D.C., basically. That's all it is. That Jefferson City, in a nutshell, is a miniature version of Washington, D.C.,
Well,
sadly.
one thing I want to put a caveat on here too. Not caveat, but one thing I want to add on to what you're just saying is that if Amendment 5 passes, what you're going to see is an unprecedented flood of lobbyist money hitting Jefferson City, guaranteed. And it's going to be for 5 consecutive years. Every year that they have a battle on who does or doesn't have sales tax applied to theirs, you're going to have all of the trade unions, the real estate agents. I mean, everyone and their mother is going to come out of the woodworks and try to keep taxes off of their business. And so what's that going to do to all these PACs and all these legislatures? It's going to start lining a bunch of pockets. So if you think we have a lobbyist problem now, imagine when every single industry in Missouri is fighting to keep a sales tax off because we've given the legislature unlimited power to raise that tax on people. It's going to be insane. It's kind of what you guys were alluding to with the John Deere tractors and everything. Yeah. And the farmers and agriculture, like there's going to be the obvious cutouts, but the not obvious cutouts are going to be fought for super hard by the lobbyists. And it's going to be just a parade of people in and out of every union and organization coming in saying, don't put a sales tax on our thing, or either we're going to give you a lot of money or make it really hard for you to get reelected. You're going to see primary challengers taking tons of money. I think it's going to open up a major floodgate on lobbyist spending. Now, like I'm piecing this together now, unless you guys have some pushback.
No, I don't, because we've already, again, past prior history, big ag, stuff like that. They've already got their carve-outs. They've gotten their tax credits. There's already history there. Used car, Missouri Realtors Association, the Missouri Farm Bureau, they're all in. And they're even complaining about bills that have nothing to do with whatever industry they represent, because they're basically crying because they were spending too much time on a certain piece of legislation. Again, biological males playing in girls' sports. And somebody from some big ag producer was in the committee hearing complaining. He's like, I don't know why you guys are spending so much time. This is going to be a win. Nobody's really getting hurt by this anyway. I don't know why we're sitting here debating this. But it was like he was upset that they were spending so much time on that they weren't getting to the stuff that he thought they should be doing, which was agricultural things. So it's all played out in front of us before. And there's no reason to think that an Amendment 5 passes, that behavior is suddenly going to grind to a halt, especially if you get Amendment 4 passing, so that even more lobby money comes through to try to affect the legislative body to get amendments or things passed, because they have an easier they have a lower threshold. So it just seems like they're setting themselves up for a nice influx of cash in order to affect taxation or whatever else, to lob it in their favor. And then the people and small businesses are all going to get left holding the bag. Tom, your thoughts?
I think I think we're looking at this kind of backwards as well, because if you could, let's say you put, let's call it a gross receipts sales tax of, I don't know, 0.5%, 1% on everything. That's on businesses, that's on ag, that's on real estate, that's on purchases of new cars, everything that you can possibly think of that you're spending money on. You literally could remove that 225% of the state. I bet you if you would do an across the board, no loopholes, no anything anywhere, it's applied to everything, I would bet you could the sales tax rate down to like maybe 1% throughout the entire state. Could you imagine somebody buying $1 million house and having to having to pay a 1% sales tax on that to the state? They would freak. But there are always going to be exemptions, because there's always going to be people who are taking money out of their pocket, handing it off to somebody, and go get me the deal that you can be. The problem is the people, pretty much the only person that I can think of that goes up and lobbies on our behalf to do anything would be Ron Calzone, people part of the Missouri First. You've got Lisa Panett, and these are people who are up there all the time. I'm not going to name everybody that I know has been up there, but we've got like maybe a handful, maybe 5 people. One, so there's a population base of what, 3.2 million people in the state of Missouri. We've got 5 people who, for the lack of a better word, represent our best interest when they go to Jefferson City, probably 90% of the time. But yet you take certain sectors of employment, they'll spend millions of dollars to pay lawyers and different people to go up to Jeff City to lobby on their behalf, so their tax rates will be less, which has a larger impact on A, what the state believes it must spend, and B, helping out people who can't afford their tax bills from losing their heat, losing their conditioning, losing their cars. I mean, the list goes on and on.
Yeah, I completely understand your point. It's just the lobbying power. Again, I don't have faith that there won't be carve outs everywhere. That's my problem. Because again, they haven't proven themselves trustworthy enough for me to think they wouldn't do something like that. And again, maybe I'm just a Debbie Downer pessimist. I don't know. I'm just saying those people um give me the icks, give me the icky feeling a lot of times. I mean, yeah, if we could, like to your point, if you would just have a 0.5% on your total income or whatever, your sales, and you just said, man, we can drop the state sales tax down to 1%. Freaking awesome. Again, when we're talking about this, people, I don't want it to make it sound like I don't want to pay an income tax, or I do want to pay an income tax. I don't want to pay an income tax. I just want government in this state to be responsible enough to cut their spending and do this in a more meaningful way, to where we don't constantly fear. And then, we're already looking at a budget shortfall apparently too. And they're not really wanting to talk about that too much. But the state treasurer said, hey, we could be looking at a $1.7 billion shortfall. And then he's like, go ahead and do Amendment 5. And it's like, now wait a dang minute. What are we talking about? You're talking about a shortfall of cutting out the income tax, or I mean, pre-income tax cut. You're already talking about a $1.7 billion shortfall, but then you're like, go ahead and cut the amendment or the income tax out. It's like, okay, well, where are you coming up with that extra 1.7 billion? That's not going to be a tax decrease. That would have to be a slight tax increase to make up the 1.7 billion. And it just, the math ain't mathing, fellas. It's not mathing for me. And again, I know I'm not that intelligent, but that math does not math up.
Well, I'm not certain, but I know I could be wrong about this, but from what I was reading, that Missouri rarely spends its entirety of its budget anyway. So like they approve a budget of like 50.4 billion, but then when the spending actually stops, I think they usually don't spend all of that. And so we might be okay on a budget shortfall in that regard. But to the point we're making, like if you add even if you get rid of the income tax and you have the 1% tax across the board on everything, the government's still getting its piece. Like they're not cutting, they haven't made any notion on cutting spending. I would actually love if the legislators came out with Tom's plan, because then we could at least debate the plan. then we could have that conversation. But they're just like, it's worse than that on just the whole, like you said, the trust me bro era. It's killing me.
What do you think, Tom?
I think we ought to go to Thomas Massie.
Are we making you are we irritating you with this?
Well, I had to laugh. We had that hailstorm a while back, and I was talking to my car insurance guy, and I was trying to figure out a way to keep my wife's vehicle on full coverage because we bought it back from it being totaled. Now, it doesn't have a salvage title, but I had asked him, I said, what do I need to do in order to make it so that this car back on full coverage? And he goes, well, you can only kill a horse once. So we're not going to allow you to put that vehicle on full coverage again to kill the horse twice. So
I get you. We'll move on.
I
Yeah,
think
we're beating a dead horse here.
4 and 5 are going to go the way they're going to go. 2,
Yeah.
2 is the one that deals with soil, water. I think that's actually a function of the government in some regard. I like the fact that it's actually there. I don't think they get any money and I'm not going to say this as a fact, they could, but I think the vast majority of the money they get is from this sales tax that's being put into the fund to compensate for whatever it is that the Department of Natural Resources does. I think in all sincerity, that's the way the services of government that need to be funded. That way they have a amount and they can't basically go over that. But we've got an issue with the General Assembly that they just like the fun stuff. Now, I'm responsible for thousands of children in Missouri in their child care, and I don't have any kids. Well, I do, but they're both in their thirds, so it's not like I need child care for them.
God, I would hope not. All right, let's move on to the Massie article here. You're right. We were beating a dead horse. I know. I'm on a single track. I can't get off the track for some reason. These people just irritate me to no end. All right. So this is from WLWT Channel 5, and this is out of Cincinnati, Ohio. This is just the one I pulled up. The headline is Representative Massie says he will introduce bill to withhold money from local governments that install flock cameras. It says amid growing resident backlash to the expansion of flock cameras throughout northern Kentucky, Representative Thomas Massie has weighed in on the matter, saying that he hopes to discourage their future use nationwide with a new bill. Massie, who is exiting Congress after his 7th term in office, ends this January, indicated on Saturday that he is firmly opposed to the use of flock cameras by local governments in Kentucky and throughout the U.S., writing on X that he would soon introduce a bill to withhold federal money for all jurisdictions that implement them nationwide. I'll soon be sponsoring a bill to withhold federal money from municipalities and police departments that deploy flock and other style cameras to surveil law-abiding citizens, wrote Massie in the Post. Included alongside the announcement was an image of an altered version of the historic Gadsden flag that showed a snake wrapped around a flock camera. "Don't flock me," the flag was captioned. This comes after Newport recently backtracked this month on a proposal to implement flock cameras throughout the city as widespread resident backlash emerged to the plan. Meanwhile, neighboring Kenton County remains under active discussions to potentially implement them throughout the county, a proposal that also has angered residents. Elsewhere in northern Kentucky, the city of Erlanger is among the jurisdictions that have already implemented flock cameras and continue to use them. Supporters of the cameras say that they can't be used by police to help improve public safety, allowing officers to more easily track down perpetrators of crimes in real time on public roadways or in specific locations of interest that have traditionally proved harder for the police or for police to identify criminals. However, opponents of the cameras say that they are a large-scale invasion of personal privacy by law enforcement, with the vast majority of people who will be captured on camera likely to be law-abiding citizens. Meanwhile, some of the cameras that are under discussion in Kenton County could be installed in places that traditionally allow residents to have a degree of privacy, such as parks. Massey did not immediately provide any additional information about the proposed bill, including when it would be introduced in the House of Representatives. The longtime GOP representative recently lost his primary re-election bid to Trump-endorsed and Israeli-backed challenger Ed Galrain. I added that in May. Galrain will face off against Democrat Melissa Strange this November, as both vie to be the next rep for Kentucky's 4th congressional district. So yeah, we'll take that all day long. Again, we've talked about this issue several times on the show. We all know that when you see these flock cameras in certain locations, those are purchased by businesses. So the government really shouldn't have any say so if a business wants to put flock cameras on their lot, I guess, and someone steals something, they can read the license plate. But when you're traveling on public roads, and especially, we pulled up the DFlock map before and gone to several towns, looked at several cities across Missouri and saw the amount of flock cameras, that's disturbing. Also, seeing the amount of law enforcement officers who are getting in trouble for using the flock camera to stalk women or watch their loved ones as they travel around the city. There's been numerous examples of that abuse. And then, of course, we read the one last week where the guy only kicked on one camera, and that was in a child's gymnastics room. So we got plenty of examples of abuse of these flock cameras. And I certainly hope this is something that's proposed. My fear is that there are an awful lot of Republicans and Democrats in Washington, D.C., who seemingly love the surveillance state and the Patriot Act and everything that's come from that piece of legislation, FISA, all the different things. They seemingly are in love with a lot of this stuff. So it's a good bill. I have no problem with the bill. And I know Massey's good about writing constitutional legislation. I just, I hope this gains a lot of attention and at least makes people aware that at least someone at the federal level is fighting back a little bit. Your thoughts, Tom?
In Hanoi Field, we have 41 flock cameras. 2 additional flock are scheduled for installation. We've got several of the cameras, or the sound thing that allows you to hear and triangulate a gunshot. And it goes on to state that per Missouri law, data collected by these cameras is stored for 30 days unless saved for a specific law enforcement purpose. Is there an actual citizen on this committee that's making sure that this data is being erased every 30 days the way it's supposed to? Or are we again on the trust me, bro purpose that, oh yeah, we're getting rid of this every 30 days? In the last 30 days, Hanoi Field conducted 1,080 researches, recorded over 800,000 unique plate readings, and identified over 61,000 hot list hits of vehicles that are linked to wanted criminals. That's how we basically sell. The expansion has sparked debate with groups like Scout Springfield advocating for greater and potential removal of the cameras due to privacy concerns. Now, the last time I talked to Nick, not last Friday, the Friday before, he was talking about he's going to have on one of the representatives from Flockout Springfield, and then there is the town of Willard, that's like a little bit to our northwest, There's a flock out movement over there as well. People are getting frustrated that they are being tracked 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And I don't care how many times you try to convince me that, oh, Tom, data centers, those are simply just so we can do credit card transactions and medical records and all the all these needed things you've convinced yourself of, that you like Facebook and Google and your phone. And I'm sorry, I don't need the government putting camera systems, which now, from my understanding, cameras can record verbal conversations. So if you're at a crosswalk where there's a flock camera for the traffic, if you're standing there talking to somebody, that flock camera will record your conversation and store it, and eventually be able to match your voice, thing that would pinpoint who you were, where you were standing, at what time you were standing there, and the whole meaning of the massive expansion of data centers. A huge portion of it is to implement the national surveillance state.
Yeah, before Brandon starts talking here, I did find it hilarious that when we looked on a DFlock site and saw the cameras along Highway 50 going right through the middle of Jefferson City, the ones on the north side along several streets were all pointed towards the vicinity of the Capitol, even though they're a few blocks away. And it's like, oh, so is that to track all the criminals coming from the Capitol going home? Or what's that? What's that about? Because the one on the bridge is facing bridge traffic. But yeah, there's like 5 or 6 that are all like this, and they're all pointed in the general direction of the Capitol. It's like, I think Flock knows where a lot of criminals are hanging out, between the lobbyists and some of the legislators up there. Anyway, go ahead, Brandon.
I think it sounds like Tom wants China to win the AI war, is what it sounds like to me.
Yeah, you commie.
100%.
No. Yeah, if winning that AI war means that China has better surveillance over their people than we do, by all means, let them have it. No, it's kind of depressing in a way seeing a Thomas Massie post like this, because he's on borrowed time. He won't be there anymore, so we'll have sometimes 1, sometimes 0 good members of the House, depending on which one member wants to show a spine any given day. But for the most part, no, we'll back to having no actual liberty-minded representation in the House of Representatives, which is sad, of course. But I read somewhere in one of the cities, so somebody asked for a FOIA on the contract that their city had with the flock, because the police department didn't have access to the contract. It was done by the city council, and only they were the ones with the contract. And when they finally got the contract back, that the contract actually said that Flock was allowed to give their party to like law enforcement and other third party outside organizations, which means that Flock essentially had legal permission to sell their data to whoever they wanted, which is, it's hard not to just obviously put 2 and 2 together and think, okay, everyone's data is like marketable now. Like all of your social media data, the reason that they sell that data to advertisers, and they give certain ad spots based on what people search. And so I think that Flock for sure has a vetted interest in holding on to that data and selling it to third parties. It's just if you're a business and you're looking for ways to make money, selling data is a big one in the new age of information. And so it's a no-brainer that at least at a minimum, Flock wants to do that. Like they want to be able to just sell anyone's data wherever. Now, I'm sure certain cities have worked in where only police can get that data or whatever. But I think a lot of people, even if your city is starting to use Flock, and let's say you think it's going to actually stop all the crime in your town and it's never going to be used bad against you, you should at least double check your flock camera contracts for your city and make sure that it's not stipulated that flock can sell your data anyway.
Yeah, not to mention that people have asked for, if I'm not mistaken, people have asked or made FOIA requests for their own personal information that have been, collected from flock cameras, and the city's been like, you can't have that. We can't allow you to have that. And it's like, why not? It's my car, it's my license plate. And they're refusing, flat out refusing to give any information that's been collected on that flock camera to that individual that he knows he's driving past that camera, would like to see it, and they are absolutely refusing to give it over and saying, we can't do it. It's like, well, why can't you do it? So that's concerning. Just to let you guys know, we got about 8 minutes left. Tom, go ahead. Any other thoughts you have here?
Well, I'm amazed that you think that this is a problem in the land of the free, home of the brave.
I know, I'm kind of an idiot.
It's gotten to the point where I'll condone the fact that the government tracks them. They condone the fact that these automobile manufacturers are mandated to put in tracking availability so government can track them, that the government will mandate that the car be able to tell whether or not the car and AI believes that you're capable of driving. The old, well, if you don't have anything to hide, well, I'm sorry, my freedom and my liberty is more important to me than whether or not you or I or anyone else has anything to hide. That's not what this country was founded on. That's not the basis of this country. Our founding fathers would have already been. It would have been the second American Revolution by.
Yeah, I definitely think the founders are dizzy from rolling in their graves. Like even if they could stand up, they wouldn't be able to walk a straight line. They've been rolling in their graves for at least a century now.
Been dizzy from all the rolling around.
And here I thought it was some smoking pot.
I mean, they did like their hemp back then, so you never know. I bet.
According to the History Channel.
Yeah, I mean, I just wonder if if they made toilet paper out of hemp. So, and I think if they would have done that, though, that the British would have supplied them with it just so everybody would just calm their butts down if they wipe with hemp toilet paper. Like, oh, these freaking uppity rebels, we need to send them some hemp toilet paper so it'll calm their butts down. I don't know. That's just a horrible joke, and I'm sorry I said it almost. But yeah, I don't know. You're right. And those famous words, well, if you're not doing anything wrong, what are you worried about? I remember talking to people a year. Well, no, it was probably, I'd say, 6-7 years after the Patriot Act was passed. Somebody brought it up. I was riding with 2 other parents to a field trip that my son was on. And somebody brought that up, and they're like, well, if you're not doing anything wrong, what are you worried about? And I go, those are kind of famous last words in a lot of instances. Like, why should we all be treated like criminals? And again, I think somebody else has brought this up, but I know my friend Tim at work did. What a perfect name for a camera system, that they see us as sheep, but flock cameras. We're being herded. And again, post-COVID, can you imagine if these flock cameras would have been all over the place during COVID? I remember people who lived outside of Owensville who worked at the printing company here in Owensville. They had to keep a piece of paper in their car saying that they were allowed to go to work, because some people were talking about getting pulled over by the highway patrol, and they would show them this thing like they were one of the select groups of people that could continue to go to work, and have to show them this thing. Say, I work at LSC. And they're like, oh, okay, go ahead. You're headed to work. Imagine if we had all those flock cameras during COVID. Holy smokes. They know what they would have just read your license plate off a thing and probably sent you a summons in the mail because they caught you driving down the street past the flock camera and it registered their license plate. And again, folks, I know we've discussed this before, but their plans in the future are to have these days where it's like, oh, it's an awful lot of pollution in the air. Everybody has to stay home today because it's a climate emergency. They've already discussed it. After COVID, this is one of the things they said they were going to do. They would declare a climate emergency, and you are not to leave your house that day. You are not supposed to go to work. What better tool to have than these flock cameras? Because, I mean, right now, I could still make it to work without registering on a flock camera. I just have to take an alternate route. I would still be able to find my way to work, except for all the police on the road probably looking for people who are out and about. But if it was just dependent on the flock cameras, right now, if they're like, no one goes to work tomorrow, I could go up 19 to Herman, go across the bridge, hit 94, and take 94 all the way the back way in to the building that I work at and not pass a single flock camera. If I go 50, I'm screwed. But if I take 19 to 94, I'm winner, chicken dinner. But folks have got to wrap their head around that these policies are not created for the good of mankind. They never are. There's always an alternative reason behind doing these things, creating these surveillance systems. And yes, somewhere down the road, they will declare, who knows how long it'll be. It might be 10 years, could be 15. They just declare a climate emergency and you are not to leave. Also, if you buy a car past 2027, that thing probably won't even start up because of all the camera systems and everything that they're going to have in those cars. So between the system that they're putting in your car with an inward facing camera, watching your movements and your facial features and everything else, between that and the cameras along every major roadway, I mean, there's not good. If you buy 2027 and beyond, you'll be monitored in your own freaking car. And even like Ford has thought about adding something to their vehicles that if you miss too many car payments, the car automatically leaves your house and drives itself back to the dealership. No kidding. That's a feature they've talked about adding to their vehicles. So just keep that in mind, folks, when you think that the big bad government couldn't go wrong. Just think of all the features that are being added to your car and along the roadway, and they've admitted their plan, and don't think that they won't implement it at some time, especially if you're sheepish enough to fall for this nonsense. Tom, we got about 3 minutes left. Any last words from you, sir?
I'm kind of curious. Does Ford call that program the ET phone home system?
Don't give them any freaking ideas, Tom. Okay, just don't give them any ideas, brother. Let them come up with stuff on their own.
I mean, well, that was the whole basis of the movie E.T., right? He was going to phone home. So Ford's just implementing a system where the car is going to go back to its home because it's obvious you've neglected it because you haven't made your car payments.
Yeah, it is crazy. I remember seeing articles come out about it, and people were like, "Are you freaking kidding me right now?" But yeah, Ford's like, "Yeah, we're looking into this technology." So I don't know. It's insane. Brandon, any parting words before we end the show this evening?
Yeah, I don't know if you guys heard, but Ukraine started launching missiles at Iran. And so now there's like a new fear that those wars are going to merge somehow. I don't think it's likely. I don't think the US isn't ready for a dogfight with Russia at this point. But I know Lindsey Graham, wherever he's at, he's pumped about it. So, yeah, I don't know. It's a dangerous time we live in.
Absolutely. And folks, don't forget that Mr. Martz is on KSGF every Friday on the Nick Reed Show, and you can go to ksgf.com and find the podcast version of their hour. And sometimes Tom might take over the whole 3 hours. He might sit in. So don't forget about that. Go look at ksgf.com and look for Tom's commentary every Friday on the Nick Reed Show. All right, folks. Well, that's going to do it for this week's edition of the Missouri Liberty Report. We are looking at trying to get Keith Knight on the show at some point. He just put out a 4-hour video and audio thing about 64 reasons to avoid democratic socialism. And I've made it through some. It's a pretty good presentation. So we're hoping to have him on the show in the not too distant future. And we'll be looking for some other new guests as we go along. With that being said, again, to those of you who watch via YouTube, Rumble, or Facebook, we greatly appreciate you. For those of you who listen in podcast land or at molibertyradio.us, we also greatly appreciate your continued support of the show. And don't forget, if you go to Spreaker.com, you look for Missouri Liberty Report, you can become a supporter of the show. It's a whole whopping $2 a month. And if you listen via Spreaker, you will get those shows ad-free. All right, if you listen via podcast. That being said, we'll see you right back here next Tuesday evening for another edition of the Missouri Liberty Report.